The freezing rapids of the Obihingo River in Soviet Central Asia poured down from the Pamir Mountains, pitting a team of boaters against its rock-strewn course. Using Russian-style catarafts and kayaks, the expedition has come in search of an international first descent, but don't hold your breath. The Obihingo has already claimed the lives of several boaters. A few years ago, such a joint effort would have been unthinkable. Yet, with an atmosphere of new hope in the Soviet Commonwealth, this expedition brings together athletes from all over the world who, by way of their visit, find themselves witness to a crisis of history. Expedition Earth is proudly presented by Canon, a corporation which is dedicated to the preservation of a clean and healthy environment. Welcome to Expedition Earth, a series of specials focusing on adventure, wildlife, and the environment. Soviet art reflects the profound changes happening in the region. Changes that are providing an opportunity to explore areas once hidden from the world. I'm Peter Benchley, host of Expedition Earth. Today we journey to Central Asia, to a river flowing from the remote Pamir Mountains, where a group of whitewater rafters from 7 countries join a Russian team considered the best in the world. Their goal is the first international descent of the Obihingo River, a difficult and dangerous watershed. 5 years ago, this expedition would have been unthinkable because of political restrictions, but new freedoms have tempted some of the best whitewater athletes in the world. They've come from Norway, Scotland, the US, Japan, New Zealand, and Costa Rica. They will need all their skills, plus some new ones, because they propose not only to make the first international descent, but to do it Russian style, using the boats and techniques of the 8-man Russian team that has invited them to share this adventure. The Obihingo, a test piece for Soviet boaters, has already claimed several lives. The surrounding peaks make flying especially risky, while the river course itself is strewn with truck-sized boulders and drops that can pin the unwary in a watery grave. To add to the difficulties, the river's temperature is just above freezing, fed by the meltwater of glacial peaks nearly 25,000 feet high. This is the Pamirs, the highest mountain chain in the former Soviet Union. This is the heart of the continent, for it's here that the great ranges of Asia, the Caucasus, the Hindu Kush, the Karakoram, and the Himalaya, radiate out like spokes from a central hub. To challenge this great range and the rivers that flow from it requires experts with supreme confidence in their abilities. The Russian team is not only expert, they are 2-time whitewater champions of the world, known as the Gorky team because all 8 members come from the city of Gorky, about 250 miles from Moscow. Each 4-man cataraft will be paddled by athletes of different nations, making communication especially difficult. Sasha Tokarev has boated in many countries outside the Soviet Union. Many of the Gorky team members rely on him for his English. Unlike most other Russians, the Gorky team members are experienced travelers, having competed in whitewater events on the global river circuit. So it was more a reunion than an introduction when the Gorky team showed the international boaters around Moscow. But everyone could feel in the air an undercurrent that was anything but normal. The bells in the Kremlin clock tower still signaled the changing of the guard at Lenin's tomb. But now the ceremony seemed a tawdry reminder of the real change that had ushered out the old guard and marched in the new. It was only 2 months earlier that Red Square had filled with thousands of Muscovites protesting the ill-fated coup. The hardline communists who momentarily seized power failed to measure the passion of the people. Misha Tulnikov took the team to the site of the former Soviet parliament.
In front of you there is a building of Russian parliament.
Это здание в течение 3 дней в августе во время путча приковывало...
During the coup d'etat in August, this building attracted the attention of all the world.
Сюда пришли люди, простые советские люди.
Ordinary Soviet people came here, people of different professions.
стояли мои друзья, наши друзья из
At
московских
these
команд.
barricades, there were a lot of my friends, river runners.
Они стояли плечом к плечу в несколько рядов.
They spent here 3 nights and 3 days standing shoulder to shoulder.
Они стояли, держась за руки, вот так
So
вот.
they were standing, holding hands.
И демократия победила,
And democracy won,
потому что народ победить нельзя.
because people cannot be defeated.
The people won, and the people toppled the icons of over 70 years of communist rule. In a moment of reckless glee, statues came tumbling down all over the Soviet Union. Like many of their countrymen, the members of the Gorky team saw an opportunity. They quit their state jobs and set out to fulfill their dream of owning their own rafting company. A crisis of history has given them a chance. Sasha Tokarev took the group past a graveyard of monuments.
Here you see all the monuments that were taken off during the coup by people who were really indignant and were really emotionally involved in this coup.
Это символ того, что путч не удался.
And now this is a symbol of failing of the coup.
И то, что они находятся здесь, это как Сибирь для русских людей.
So now this small place, like an exile for these people who were famous and respected many years ago, this is their Siberia in the middle of Moscow.
The broken idols and empty promises of yesterday have given way to a new hope, and suddenly anything seems possible. With their eyes on the future, the members of the Gorky team want to do everything at once, except look back. Before the expedition left Moscow to fly to the Pamir Mountains, the Russian rafters showed home movies of their past river trips. Though the homemade Russian crafts showed themselves to be durable, they also seemed to offer little protection for boaters. The deal was, of course, that the international athletes would descend the Obihingo in just these sorts of crafts. As the visitors oohed and awed, their laughter carried an increasingly nervous edge. Soviet rafters are notorious for going to extremes and beyond. When the Gorkys assured their guests that the Obihingo would be very good, they wondered if that might not mean very bad. As the Soviet helicopter ferried the team to the put-in, they had their first close look at the river. It ran narrow and fast. Long stretches appeared to be choked with huge and potentially dangerous boulders. But there was good news. The water volume seemed low. The Obihingo would be difficult, but it looked runnable. Scotland's Neil Baxter was first out as the team offloaded the equipment and supplies they would need for their 8-day descent, including food they had purchased in the bazaars of the Silk Road cities of Central Asia. With European football in his blood, Neil played dribble the melon until Costa Rican boater Rafael Gallo stepped into the picture. Fresh fruit would soon be worth its weight in gold, and Rafael wasn't taking any chances. The Pamir Mountains are the locus of the ancient trade routes between east and west. Camel caravans loaded with silk and spice crossed the passes to the north of the range, above modern-day Afghanistan. They traversed valley after valley as they plodded toward the caravanserai of Samarkand. 500 years ago, this was the capital of a vast desert kingdom that boasted the largest mosques in the Islamic lands of Central Asia. The region remains an important center of trade and commerce and a source for fresh fruits and vegetables, a welcome addition to the expedition's food supply. No expense was spared in the construction of the mosques. Precious stones and tiles were brought here from around the world to honor the spirit of Mohammed. A culture of craftsmen and artisans sprang up around ancient Samarkand, and today, many tradesmen can be seen working in the outdoors, much as their ancestors before them. American Arlene Burns and Sasha Tokarev wandered the byways of the city. Despite the arid soils surrounding Samarkand, some herdsmen still graze their flocks in the foothills where seasonal grasses sustain goats and sheep. With supplies safely unloaded, the team formed a human tarp over their stores of food and gear so that the Aeroflot chopper wouldn't scatter all that they had gone to such great lengths to obtain. Now they were truly and perhaps frighteningly alone. Founder of the International Rafting Exchange Program, Project RAFT, Jib Ellison has known this feeling of isolation many times before, and Sasha Tokarev was quick to reassure him.
Before this, all okay. Yeah, I forget how to say.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. No. The grass always greener on the other side.
Лучше, чем ничего.
Better than nothing.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Yeah. Good.
This was an experienced group, quick to divide chores and set up camp. The biggest job was assembling the boats. Rafting tradition in Russia has developed around the need to backpack boats and supplies into remote headwaters. These multi-pieced Russian frames are much more portable than their monolithic American counterparts, which usually have the advantage of being trucked or bussed to a put-in point. But the Soviets, lacking roads and transport vehicles, have found ways to do more with less. All their boats are homemade, put together during nights and weekends, often with scrap materials. Even so, the boats are expertly engineered and very strong for their weight. Once the frames are assembled, a skin of plastic and nylon is stretched over the kayak, reminiscent of the first kayaks or umiaks, which were covered with sealskin and used by Soviet Eskimos for hunting. Other than 2 plastic American kayaks, the team intended to run the Obihingo using Russian boats, a new experience for the visitors. Other Russian craft in the making that morning included a 4-man catamaran. Noriyuki Abe, the lone Japanese boater among the team, shared inflation duties with Volodya Molochkov. A notable characteristic of the Soviet cat is that boaters ride atop the pontoons, not in them. This results in a higher center of gravity, allowing for greater leverage, but it also means there's a greater risk of being tossed from the boat. Neil Baxter was surprised by the lightness of the craft and, like Icarus, thought to make it fly.
So you can roll it quite easy.
Last year, Sasha and I ran the Obihingo in the lower part of the river, and I think we were the first Westerners to run it, and it was the first time that these Gorky guys had run it too. And we put in downstream of a few days, missing the top canyon because we were told it was very strong and it was quite cold. And so this time we're putting in a little higher, and we'll have this first canyon to start out. So I think we're all pretty excited to see what's down here, and the water level's a little lower, which is good news for us, and the water's bluer than it was last year. We're expecting some pretty nice rapids, and I imagine some big holes and some technical water. It should be a great trip. It was such an education traveling with these Soviets. They really have it down, and their passion and love of the river has been something that's really affected me, and the Gorky team has become very special to me, and they're great bunch of guys. Da? Yeah.
Launch day finally arrived. After weeks of planning and packing and thousands of miles of travel, the team was anxious to get wet. Warming up in the Obihingo's frigid flow was another story, but the first few miles were wide and easy. It gave the boaters time to ponder the one problem that had already made itself a nettlesome part of the expedition, the language barrier. With no fewer than 4 languages to reckon with, the team had worked hard to reduce their on-river needs to a handful of universal commands and signals. Whether or not it would work was anybody's guess. Safety was also a topic on everybody's lips. With evacuation a near impossibility, the team was well aware of the need for scouting each section and running within their limits, especially on this first day of hard paddling. In any case, their honeymoon with the Obihingo proved short. Up ahead, the canyon began to narrow, focusing the power of the river. It was not long before the team could see the flow drop into a congestion of house-sized boulders, their first big test. Jib Ellison was first into the slot, getting his highly maneuverable kayak downstream to act as scout and safety boat. Next came the Russian 2-man catarafts. These boats are light and quick, a major asset on a technical river like the Obihingo. A second cataraft also found its way through, followed by the more cumbersome and more linguistically complex 4-man cat. Wider and less maneuverable than the 2-man cat, this craft had a hard time with the many slots and boulders on the run. To compound difficulties, the 2 big cats were piloted by mixed crews of several nationalities who were testing their signals for the first time in order to maneuver the boats around rocky and treacherous obstacles. It was a struggle of muscles as well as tongues. Giddy from their successful first run, the smaller boats congratulated themselves while the 4-man behemoths paddled hard to get to shore.
То есть они перекашивали немножко, да? Немножко перекашивали камеры. These things are brilliant, eh? Yeah. Good run, good run. Good job, friends. Successful maiden voyage.
Let's go.
I think we have a little bit more work to do before we're in full communication form, but there's some different styles here that we're all meshing, and I think it'll work out. I hope.
Rafting an ice-cold river can sometimes be unpleasant, but rafting an ice-cold river in a snowstorm can be downright miserable. As the team started its second day on the Obihingo, everyone wondered how long the snow would last. A day or even two would be fine. In fact, the snow added a gentle beauty to the scenery. But if it lasted longer than that, there would be reason for concern. Luck was with them. By afternoon, the skies had cleared and they could defrost before tackling one of the biggest rapids on the river, the one the Russians called Anaconda. Clearly, a multilingual scout with proper interpretation was needed to instill new confidence in the team.
Мощный все-таки этот отбойный вал.
It's very powerful water here.
И может катамаран прижать и к этому камню, и к тому камню.
Catamaran can be both stuck near this stone and the left stone, both.
So we must come in at a straight angle.
Пойдем под прямым углом, прямо на камень.
Да, чтобы использовать отбойный вал.
Yeah, we should use the power of the water.
Once agreement was reached on the best line to take around the hazardous rocks, the maneuverable two-man cats started out. Costa Rica's Rafael Gallo and Sasha Dognov were first to pit their skills against the Anaconda. Vitya and Sasha Tikhonov, identical twins, made the next assault. Even with their instinctual harmony and high level of communication, they found trouble. Off-river, these two share business duties as well, running a successful contracting company that would have been outlawed in the years before the coup. The kayaks followed so that all the safety boats would be in place at the bottom of the rapid in case one of the larger boats flipped. Sasha Tokarev is the soul of the Gorky team. An expert kayaker and rafter, he recently quit his job to start a river guide service. Andrei Kapitanov followed. He is the most expert kayaker on the Gorky team. He too has quit his old job, joining Sasha in the guiding business and manufacturing collapsible kayaks. The first of the four-man catarafts was led by Misha Priamkov, age 39. Misha is the manager of the Gorky team, and under his leadership, the cat came through unscathed.
A lot of time, and then they were going to make it, but it was great.
Beautiful river. Beautiful river. Beautiful river. Yes.
How was your run, Rob?
Excellent. We had a great time. We really got it together. Yeah, good. Very good day. Great time.
With the first big rapids behind them and the communications problem better resolved, enthusiasm was high, but the water temperature remained very low. Under these circumstances, hygiene takes a back seat to warmth. Russians are masters of improvisation, and the tradition of a hot sauna in a cold climate is a trademark of their culture. But what do you do when you're in the wilderness? You build a sauna. It can take a while, so sometimes it helps to speed things up.
На меня с упреком смотрит мать, пора бы бабу, а чего ходишь холостой?
Быт колхозный!
У тебя в мозгах сплошной застой. Ого! И твердит с утра и до утра. Скоро мне жениться, мне пора быть бабу, пора. Эй, сухомятку день, наживусь, ого! Скоро мне жениться, мне пора быть бабу, пора.
I'm from Costa Rica and the water down there is very warm. And here in the Pamirs, it doesn't matter that the water is cold, just because who you're with and where you are.
I'm really happy to be here to join this expedition. It's amazing experience, I think.
Russian teams do a river expedition much like we would approach climbing Mount Everest. They're very goal-oriented and they overcome all sorts of obstacles, even if it means climbing up to the top of a mountain to go around a rapid.
These guys are really tough. They make their own boats, they make their own packs, their sleeping bags, their tents, and they can haul everything over these massive mountains and glaciers to the headwaters of very remote rivers.
The river doesn't know if you're Russian or if you're Scottish. It just runs its own course. So when we're in there all strapped together, the only language we are really speaking together is river talk.
With the help of an interpreter, Jib Ellison got a chance to hear more about the brave course the Gorky team members have chosen for themselves in the new Russia.
For 14 years I have been working as an engineer, but parallel to my main job I had a hobby, designing and construction of collapsible kayaks, catamarans and different tourist equipment. Now my dream is to begin my own business. Now I decided to quit my job and just do it. I love kayak very much because when I'm in the kayak, I'm in front of everybody and I go wherever I want and I feel independent.
These Gorky guys, because they've had the courage to quit their jobs, I think really they're the examples of a whole new breed of Soviet energy and passion that will take the Soviet Union in a new direction and help them make this transition a real positive one. But I think one thing we've been overlooking are the emotional and psychological and spiritual transitions that these people are going through. And for example, a few months ago I was on a river trip in Siberia, and we were keeping a group journal, and it was the first time these guys were actually writing down their feelings and thoughts without fear of it being used against them later on. And just opening their souls on this level is something very new for them and something we've taken for granted in the West from when we were children.
Day 4 of the Obihingo expedition found yaks grazing high above the campsite. Taking advantage of the sunny skies, the team planned to run their biggest rapid to date. One of the Gorky team tested the flow of the current. Another placed a juniper bough on a plaque commemorating those who had died in this rapid. Clearly, their strategy here would have to be precise.
Okay, when we set the safety up, we have to make absolutely sure that everybody knows where everybody is, where all the safety is. So, what we're going to do, we'll send some kayaks down. First, we'll send Jibster.
What do you think about throw ropes? Do you think there are places we should have
Well,
them?
we'll stick one of the rafts over in the big eddy over there with a couple of people on it, with throw lines.
Okay, who wants to go over there?
Well, we'll send Cam. Send Cam.
I want to go fishing.
Okay, we should have a kayaker up there as well, I think, just in case anyone makes it round the corner.
Maybe Earl?
Okay, Jib, I think it'd be a good idea if we had a kayaker in that, behind the big rock down there.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe a couple of people on the bank with throw lines.
After everyone's through the top slot, I'll eddy midway out as well.
Okay, is everyone ready to go? All right, let's go!
American Earl Alderson from Tennessee made the first run. A reverse current quickly trapped his kayak under the full force of the river. Racing against the flow and quickly losing energy, Earl knew he had to pop out or bail out soon. Finally, he seemed to squirt free of the river's cold grip and went on to set up as a safety boat below. Next came the twins, the Gorky's most effective paddling duo. With momentum, they punched right through the reverse current. The twins had conducted a lesson in how it should be done. Next up was a four-man cat with nationalities aplenty. Scotland's Neil Baxter felt the force of the Obihingo. What looked like a precarious and potentially dangerous situation resolved itself as the crew was able to nudge back off the rock. Gorky team member Sasha Tokarev got bumped around from the start in his Russian frame kayak. Last to come was the second four-man cat. Arlene Burns and her raft mates were in for a full wash cycle. The low water level left the Obihingo's rocky features to stand out above the flow, ready to snag boats and paddles as they passed. This sort of run requires a precision hard to achieve in the four-man cataracts. On the sixth day of the trip, the glacial melt Obihingo River in Soviet Central Asia picked up volume as it passed through a narrow gorge, promising bigger rapids below. If the river had a knockout punch, it would come soon after this gorge.
I feel now self like children from you and Kevin. You like master, great masters. Slowly, you are take water. Water no take cure.
We use the water.
You use the water and no water use. Fantastic. When I look, before I think this is impossible. Now I see this. This is reality. We all time like this think, this strong rabbit, he must be like this and like go to war.
Go to war.
Yeah. But we go like play. Fantastic.
If the Americans had one thing they could show the Russians, it was how to have fun. Sasha Tokarev followed as American Earl Alderson continued to strut his stuff. The bond of friendship between these boaters would be important as they prepared to face the final challenge of the Obihingo. That afternoon, a potato farmer who lived on a plateau above the river invited the rafters for tea. Some of the team had been surprised that there weren't more farmers in the area, but they were about to learn why the Obihingo Valley was sparsely populated. A formal welcome was in order, with due respect shown for the farmer's house. The farmer's name was Tajik. He and his family were able to live with a high degree of self-sufficiency. They lacked for almost nothing. Virtually all of the foods that he laid before his guests were harvested on his farm. Through interpreter Nina Padden, the team heard his story.
We produce honey for ourselves. We have our own beehives.
Why, if his grandfather lived here, why did they leave? Why did he just return 3 years ago?
Tajik explained that in the 1930s, Stalin relocated virtually the entire population of the Pamir valleys to the lowlands, where they were forced to work on irrigated cotton plantations that drew water from the great rivers that flowed out of the Pamirs. But the same runoff also fed one of the world's largest inland lakes, the Aral Sea, an area once rich with life. But with the feeder rivers diverted for irrigation, the Great Sea soon dried up. Fishing boats were marooned and sand dunes invaded cities. A fishing industry and the species that supported it were lost, creating what some ecologists describe as an environmental catastrophe on a par with Chernobyl. The only good news is that families once forced out of their mountain homes were allowed to return.
I think this is a very good place to live.
Они говорят, что, наверное, это очень хорошее место для жизни.
Здесь, конечно, хорошее место.
Of course, it's a perfect place to live.
Do you see many groups coming down the river?
Много здесь народу ходит по реке, туристов.
О, каждый год много ходит.
Every year in summer, a lot of groups go down the river.
Ask him how big the rapid is just down here.
Да, это немножко тяжеловато. А потом оттуда хорошо пойдет.
He says that this stretch that is right below you,
Деревья есть, это есть.
it's a very serious stretch with rocks, about 1 kilometer. And then the river is very good. So you should look forward to an easier stretch.
Не так это трудно.
Ask him if he will come with us.
Они приглашают с ними пройти на лодке.
Может быть.
Yes, I will go. I'm not afraid of water.
As the team prepared to hike back down to their river camp, the farmer's warning stayed with them. A kilometer of heavy water and glacial boulders, unlike anything they had faced to date, was still ahead. The experiences of the previous week came back to them, each paddler knowing that he or she must find a last reserve of strength with which to punch through the final rapid. This multinational collection of boaters knew now that they belonged to a team in a way that had not been true at the outset of the expedition. That sense of belonging might make a difference if rescue runs had to be performed in the rapids that loomed ahead. In the end, the Soviet farmer had confirmed what the Gorky team expected. The Obihingo was saving its greatest challenge for last. New Zealander Cam McClay offered to conduct a Maori war chant to get the team psyched up for their final and most difficult challenge on the river. It was going to take quite a bit more than a war chant to tame the Liangar Rapid, named after a nearby village. The safety man with a throw rope was positioned near the bottom as Andrei Kapitanov launched his kayak into the breach. Andrei wasted no time getting himself into trouble, but he was able to roll up and catch a much-needed breath. With Andrei adding his kayak to the safety support team, the redoubtable twins came next. With their cataract high-sided onto a boulder and the surge sweeping by, the brothers had their hands full just trying to avoid capsizing. When they finally went over, they had to get out from underneath as quickly as possible. They came out of their straps and scrambled to get atop the raft. Flipping back over, they rode out the rapid using the raft as a fortress against the rocks. Their experience was quickly digested by others anxious for clues as to the pattern of the current. A second round of Maori war chanting became the mantra of the moment as 4 members of the Gorky team prepared to face the rapid in a cataract. Having scouted the run, they thought it best to make the descent without any of the international team members, fearing that a language barrier would jeopardize the safety of the whole boat. As the cat was slipping through the final reaches of the rapid, the other Gorky members were preparing a second cataract. Again, they felt it would be best if Gorky members only piloted the craft. But the lone Japanese member of the international team, Noriyuki Abe, had grown very close to the Gorky boaters both in spirit and rafting style. Besides, Abe felt that this was the point of the expedition, to allow boaters of different nations to share the risks of the river together.
So I asked them, I really want to go, and still they said, might be, maybe not, they said. And I asked again, and they said, okay, but, command is all Russian.
So with all the commands in Russian, Noriyuki Abe became the only non-Soviet boater to run the Liangar Rapids in a 4-man cataract. Despite the fluid teamwork they displayed in the early parts of the run, the Gorkies and Abe soon found themselves bouncing from rock to rock in their wide-bodied cat. Snagged on a boulder, it looked as though the cat might flip. As they came off, a safety rope was thrown out to them, but the team had found a way through. What had begun as an expedition fraught with the burden of too many languages ended as a symbol of what people can accomplish when they choose to work together. If the Gorky team's expertise on the Obihingo indicates anything about their future, then they should indeed look forward to success as river guides and entrepreneurs in the new Soviet Commonwealth. For it is here that the language of the river spoke to all the team members of hope, harmony, and better things to come. Expedition Earth is proudly presented by Canon, a corporation which is dedicated to the preservation of a clean and healthy environment.